she was a teacher after NASA. And so she taught at the University of San Diego and used her physics degree in that regard. She was also an athlete, top 20 junior tennis player in the country. She also played volleyball and softball. And I wish I could just play one sport, maybe that well. And she was an author. She published To Space and Back. And not until she passed away did she disclose, or was it disclosed, that she was also a lesbian. And I wonder, with someone so accomplished, and she was a businesswoman as well, and was known to have said that part of why she didn't disclose that she was gay is that she thought that it would affect how she was perceived and how she could be successful in business and other parts of her life. And with the success she did have, I often wonder how much more successful she might have been if she'd have been able to be fully herself and not have that bit of keeping something back, holding something back, holding herself back. So I wanted to go first to our Vice President of Undersea Systems for Maritime Land Sensors and Systems, Alan Lytle. Alan, thanks for joining us. And I thought maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself as you discuss why you decided to become an ally, and how has being an ally influenced you as a leader and helped you lead during all of what's happening today and in the past.
Certainly, Mary. Good morning. Good morning to all who have joined this talk this morning. Thank you for joining us. My name is Alan Lytle. I'm the Vice President at Northrop Grumman, and as Mary said, I have the distinct privilege to run our undersea systems business. Truly greatest job in the world, certainly best job I've ever had. So I have profit loss responsibility. I'm also responsibility for strategy, business development, running our campus, and ensuring the next crop of leaders are ready to take over. Kind of have an eclectic career, started off as an active duty submariner. I went into startups for a while, and then was a research engineer for about a decade before joining Northrop Grumman in 2010. With respect to being an ally, my ally journey started in October 2017 at Out and Equal. This is not an advertisement for Out and Equal, but it was transformative for me because I realized I'd always been open, accepting. I had supported STEM, particularly underrepresented groups in STEM. I'd supported women in leadership. And I realized at Out and Equal that I could do so much more for the LGBTQ plus community. I could actually use my position, I could use my voice, I could be a champion, I could be a supporter, I could be an ally. And so that started my journey, and it has been incredibly rewarding. I have learned so much, not just as it applies to being an ally for this community, but how to be a better leader overall. And so that's how my journey started. And my journey continues.
All right, excellent. And thanks so much for that, Alan. You know, it is quite an experience to participate in the broad Out and Equal conference. And I know exactly what you mean. It can be transformative. We have had so much happening this year in terms of pandemics, social unrest and racial injustice, natural disasters of all sorts. And so Cynthia Curiel, who is our Sector Vice President of Communications for our Aeronautics Systems sector, what I thought, Cynthia, I would ask you is maybe you could share a tip about how you are staying connected with your teams all around the world and working in new ways in this environment.
Thanks, Mary. So as the Communications VP on the panel today, I do have the brand behind me because that's essentially what we all are working towards at our company, is really focused on what we do for everybody that works here. And staying connected is really important, especially at a time like this. We work in diverse environments where we have different state and local health orders, as many of you have experienced. And it's been really important for us to find ways to make those who are working from home, doing their job at their kitchen table, feel as connected as those employees, as essential employees, as we all are, who have to go into the office or the workplace every day. We want everybody to feel, just in every aspect of their life, that they're included and that we care about them and that it's important. We found, of course, the same humor that everybody else did in Zoom conversations. Whatever genre you think about, and I think it's been really interesting to educate earlier career people about shows like Hollywood Squares, as well as later career people who may remember the Brady Bunch, and then what we're experiencing today, where we're all here virtually, but feeling like we are clearly part of one team. We've made a point of really keeping in touch with each individual. Our team in particular has stayed connected through communications updates that we've had, interactive non-alcoholic happy hours, because some people would be day drinking and that would be inappropriate. So instead we do coffee clutches, or we connect through, there's a group of people that have been meeting every morning doing virtual Peloton together. And I think encouraging that kind of connection with one another has made people, and in some cases for me as an intronerd and an introvert, feel more connected with my team. As well as making sure that they're connected just not only with the team of folks that they have working with them day to day, but the people that they work with at their site. So
Great.
those are just a few, Mary.
Thank you, Cynthia. We were chatting just briefly earlier that many times it's even just seeing someone's background in their home office and being able to talk about music. And I noticed some of the chats here, Alan, were saying, hey, they're also a fellow musician. Or artwork, or something that maybe gives you some common ground for the conversation. Amy, I'd like to go to you next as Vice President in Human Resources for our corporate office. And, you know, this pandemic took a lot of folks by surprise, and it certainly changed the way we all had to work and deal with each other and maybe have some personal things to deal with. After the pandemic, what was the first major hurdle that you encountered, either expectedly or unexpectedly, and how did you address it?
Thanks, Mary, and I'm so happy to be here today. So good day to everyone. In my role in HR, I had actually the privilege of serving on our enterprise crisis management team. And so this is the team that's responsible for planning some of the company-wide responses to COVID. And I would say the first major hurdle we encountered was there was no nicely packaged playbook that we could just pull off the shelf and apply to what we were experiencing. I mean, there's really no pandemic plan on paper in the world that prepares you for real life. I don't think any of us have experienced something like this in our careers. And so what I would say is we had to act fast, and we had to pull together a diverse team across all functions. We needed communications, we needed HR, business management, employee safety and health, business leaders, and we had to quickly assess and rapidly develop solutions, because under those early circumstances, our leaders, our employees, they really expected and they needed information about how the company was going to respond and support them through this crisis. What I will say is I'm so proud of Northrop Grumman's response. We really have entered in with employee safety and health first and foremost as our priority, and that's been truly our guiding principle throughout. What I would say for me, this has been a lesson in agility and collaboration and resilience, because there's no way to see the true value of a diverse team like being dunked into a crisis and truly seeing the value of the different strengths that folks bring to the table. You have to solve the problems fast, and under those circumstances, you really need everybody kind of pitching in, and you need to leverage the strengths of those around you. And so we've come through it. I'm so proud of how our company and our teams have responded, but certainly was unexpected, and it's been a learning process for everyone.
No doubt. Thanks for that, Amy. I couldn't agree more that collaboration is so important in finding new ways, as Cynthia talked about, on how to do that. Cynthia, folks were loving your coffee clutches idea and some of those things, so I'm sure some folks will take that away with them. We also had a lot of other things happen around us this year, and the resilience and the quick problem solving and agility has no doubt been important, as we then found ourselves in situations that are dealing with racial inequality and social injustice. And so I would like to next introduce Jay Patel, who is Vice President of Engineering in our Payload and Ground Systems organization in the space sector that we have. And Jay, I wanted to ask you, what did you do to prepare yourself to have uncomfortable conversations with your team on topics such as racial inequality and social injustice, topics that are not traditionally discussed in the workplace?
Yeah, Mary, thank you. That's a great question. So I think when we started seeing a lot of things happening in our country and the world around us, I think most people said, you know what, I don't like this. I want to do something. I want to try to do something to make it better. But my team would come to me and say, I want to do something, but I don't know what to do. I don't even know how to start that conversation. So I thought about that and put myself in those shoes, because it is, as you mentioned, a very difficult conversation. So the one thing I thought I would do is, don't make it specific and say, hey, everybody, let's get together and talk about racial injustice, right? Because people come in with different biases, and maybe I don't want to talk about that, so I'm not going to come. So I just started something called 10 with 10. And I would take 10 minutes out of my normally scheduled staff meeting, and I said, I'm just going to talk. I'm just going to tell you what I'm thinking, what thoughts are running through my head, and I'm not going to force anybody to do anything. You don't have to accept it. You don't have to do anything, but just listen. And when I'm done, we're done. We're going to move on. And we did that. And I just talked about, you know, my upbringing, my background, the countries that I was from, how it was different, how my parents' generation was different, how I hope it's different from my son's generation. And people listened, and it got a little quiet. And I was like, uh-oh, did I miss the mark here? But then I got some IMs and texts later saying, I really like that. Thank you for kind of putting it out there. And then so every week we kind of did the same thing. And then for the first couple of weeks, I just said, okay, 10 with 10, anybody want to share? And it was quiet. And I said, okay. But then afterwards, I can't get my team to be quiet. It's awesome. People just talk about their thoughts and what about this and how do I handle this? And I asked them to do the same thing at their staff meeting. So it's kind of like a reverse Ponzi scheme. Hopefully, as you talk and just say, I'm just going to tell you something and we'll just move forward with it. I think if you get people kind of relaxed and open to just saying, there's no wrong here, don't worry. This is an uncomfortable topic. It's okay if you say something that may not resonate. As long as I know that you want to do something, you want to get some education, you want to learn about people's different experiences, you're just here to do something positive, I think people will be willing to engage with you more. So I think just breaking that barrier, yes, it's uncomfortable, but we can't hide from that and just not do anything. Just acknowledge it and let's go. Let's try something.
Well, I really love the idea of the listen, right? And then engage the team. And there is nothing that's, you know, wrong in how you feel, but let's get it out there and have a conversation around it. I am going to go to questions here next. And as we get some of those coming in the meantime, Cynthia, maybe you could just talk about the leadership skills that you have relied on in, you know, the last couple of years and that have served you well now as you find yourself in maybe a different environment.
I think the biggest skill is empathy. And I think what Jay pointed out just a moment ago and what you highlighted, Mary, is that it's listening. You know, a lot of times leaders feel that it's really important to talk. You know, like we think that we need to tell everybody what to do, what to think, what they need to spend their time doing. And what's most important in my mind now at this point in my career is I've learned that lesson of listening. And for a communications professional, even an introvert, that's super hard, as anybody can tell you. I think this idea of really taking the time to understand another person's position, the so-called platinum rule, treating others as they want to be treated, not as you would like to be treated, has been critically important for us. And I think across the board, that's a skill that has really taken the place of a number of other leadership skills that I was taught early in my career and have essentially unlearned. You know, this idea of collaboration and cooperation and having everybody at the table feel that not only that they have a voice, but that they are heard and that what they have to bring to the table will be considered. So those are the really critical skills that I feel have been most important over the last couple of years, and most especially the last couple of months.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Cynthia. And maybe part of your answer will go toward this first question that I think I probably am best suited to take, and it's around the challenges and perhaps barriers of being an LGBTQ employee in our business, and perhaps in being a leader in our business. And so I am a member of the LGBTQ community, and I haven't always been very out with all of my teams, but I came to a point in my journey that I felt it was important, that I knew I wasn't operating at my best and I couldn't enable my team to operate at their best if I wasn't fully honest about who I am. And I kind of felt it was difficult going to colleagues' offices, seeing pictures of their families and what have you, and not really having one of mine. So I did, with the help of an HR partner, have a candid conversation with one of my teams and explained my journey and who I was, and talked about my family. And I would love to say that it was all perfect and I had nothing to fear and everyone was perfectly accepting of that. But that's not candidly the reality. And so subsequent to that, I did have one of the members of my team approach me about moving on to go do something different somewhere else in the organization because they just disagreed with my lifestyle. And I helped them to find another role that was really up their alley and that would help them continue to grow and help the company continue to grow. And so I think what we just have to realize is, look, we're all different. We all have our own approaches, our own styles, and our own situations, and we never really know what someone else's is. And so having respect, just human respect for everyone and who they are and how they show up, I think is about the best recommendation that I could have. And I guess the one thing I would say is have courage to be who you are, because that's how we'll get your best self. It's how you'll feel most effective in our organizations, wherever you may work, wherever you may be. So with that, I'm not seeing yet another, oh, I do have another question here. So maybe this one is for you, Amy. From an HR perspective, how are you looking at and developing your employees to embrace and incorporate your lessons that you talked about on agility and resilience into their own development?
Yeah, I think it's learning by doing right now, in my opinion, because we have had so much happen in 2020. And really, we've had to show that agility. I would say from a learning and development perspective, it's a perfect door to open the conversation with an individual about development when you can see real time how folks are responding or where they may be struggling. And I would say as a leader too, it's a perfect time to really hone in on development of leaders. We've in my team been coaching a lot of leaders on listening. A lot of the things we've heard here, listening, showing flexibility, and really being able to work and appreciate with individuals both where they may be struggling. I think there was a comment on the chat here around how do you help employees who are having trouble focusing, and to me it becomes very individual. And so in my team, we've been focused on making sure individuals understand the resources, that we're really supporting leaders to have the conversation with their team, and that we're using the opportunity to talk about what this environment of change and the unexpected has really done to show us where we're good at being agile and where we need to maybe have a little bit more practice.
Excellent. Those are some really great tips. You know, as you were speaking about that, Amy, one of the questions that rolled in that I'm going to actually ask Alan to answer, as well as Jay, because I think you'll have it from two different perspectives, being in the profit and loss arena and being in the engineering arena. Mental health of employees. You know, we have so many people today that are used to working in teams and groups and seeing each other and bouncing ideas off each other. And today we have many people working remotely and perhaps completely alone. How are you both assessing the mental state of your employees and making sure that they have what they need? Alan?
Okay, thanks, Mary. And first off, I just want to say thank you to this panel. I'm sitting here making, tons of notes. Jay, love the 10 with 10, love the platinum rule. And Amy, I have to say, as a leader of a campus, thank you for what you all at the crisis management team did. You made our job so much easier. So thank you so much. Really do appreciate it. And Cynthia, when you were talking about leadership styles and pulling in empathy, that really resonated. I think when assessing, and I'll be open, in my extended family, a lot of experience with mental health challenges, so very sensitive. And so I would say this period of the pandemic and the period of social unrest sort of gave us all permission to ask questions and be a little more intrusive and go past sort of the standard, yes, I'm okay, and really just ask that question until you peel back all the onion layers and you can have an honest, transparent conversation about whether or not those people are okay. And it goes, I didn't make up these words, I heard them and it really resonated with me, but it goes beyond active listening and really listening for what is not being said. And since you lose 70% of the cues, since you're not in person, you really have to listen very carefully. And you just let people go, be comfortable with white space, because when people start talking and filling in that white space, that's when real meaning gets conveyed. And then we've done things, Cynthia, we did do after hours Zoom happy hours. So people could indulge if they wanted to sort of continue that team approach. We've done as much as we can pulling in video. And we've actually done drive-bys for those people that can't actually be in the campus. We've done visits, socially distant, meeting all the rules, but just allow people to see that they're face-to-face, and care that you're okay. And so that's, again, it's a learning journey, but that's kind of how we've approached it.
Great, thanks, Alan. Get a bit out of your comfort zone. Sometimes these more personal things are really what unleash our people. Jay, what about you?
Yeah, thank you. I resonated with a lot of the things, Alan, that you mentioned. And I think something really important that Amy also brought up, I have the privilege of leading an organization that's 3,000 plus strong. So there's no one formula that's going to help, address all of the needs for everybody. You can't approach it like that. It has to be very individual. And I think kind of saying what Alan said before, just simply asking, when I have my one-on-one meetings with my staff, instead of jumping right into work and how's it going, it's how are you doing? Right? Starting off with a simple question like that, and I don't even care about work. Let's just talk about you. How are you doing? You have kids. What's going on with school? Is it working out with your spouse and how you manage juggling the different schedules and all of that kind of stuff? So I try to make sure I, on purpose, talk about just that. How are you doing as a person before I talk to you as an employee and meeting our business goals? So listening to every single person, and then really trying to help them. And I know sometimes as a leader, you quickly want to jump in and go, okay, I want to fix your problem. What's your problem? What's your problem? But you do have to be that active listener and sit back and go, well, let me see, right? Okay, let me take that in. I'll get back to you if I don't have something I can recommend or provide some advice. But sometimes just listening, I think we talked about that earlier, is a big part of that. And Alan, I love the way you said it. With all of the stuff that's going on in this world, it's really hard to just stay normal, right? So that has opened up an opportunity for us to go, it's not normal. Let's talk about this. And then a learning experience for me, my team is across the country anyway, so it was already going to be difficult to interact and make sure that we're close and tight knit as I'd like to be. So just navigating through Zoom, right? When you can't see people, which I did change, I got everybody cameras, which helped. But when you don't see people and you say something, you have to kind of stop every once in a while and go, what do you think? Does that resonate? What do you guys think about that? Because when people are not saying anything, you have no idea if they're going, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, or yeah, we're good, let's move on. So you have to pause every once in a while and just keep asking those questions. So that's how I've tried to approach it. I think we're getting there. I don't know if it'll ever be perfect, but we just got to keep trying.
Wonderful, Jay. And the whole idea of making sure that if you can see those visual cues, and Alan mentioned it, right? You lose something when you don't have those. So finding ways to maybe hear differently what you're hearing and be responsive to that. Along those lines, we've had a question that's come in that asks about our Northrop Grumman policy on remote work, telework, and what was it before the pandemic, and do we think that will permanently change afterward? And so I'm going to start with Cynthia and then go to Amy, because I know that you get a lot of these questions as part of our communications core, and that a lot of those are in discussion with HR. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you're thinking and hearing, and then we can go to Amy. Cynthia?
Sure. So Amy will certainly pick up the technical and correct anything that I may say that isn't true. Not that I'm telling a fib, but I don't have all the information. I'll just say for the communications organization that I have that supports our aeronautics systems sector, we've really encouraged our employees to focus on operating within the parameters of what the company has put in place to support people who need to remote work. Whether they have childcare, elder care, a household member who needs additional support, we've really actively supported those needs, right down to the kinds of computer equipment and other tools that they need to be able to be at home or working outside the workplace. There is a policy in place at Northrop Grumman for permanent teleworking, and we have a number of employees who are permanent teleworkers, as well as part-time teleworkers. They may work for a day or two a week, and we continue to support that. What we in communications have asked, and I think is really encouraged across our enterprise, is to take each person as an individual, really listen to what their particular needs and requirements are, and figure out a way to support them. Because I think, as all of the panelists have covered, as well as Mary as our moderator, is that it's all about really looking at the individual as part of a bigger team, and how both we can support the individual as they support the business in their role with their responsibilities. So it's been fairly well received. I know that, there was a comment made earlier that you can't make everybody, happy. You can't meet all of everyone's needs, but we do our very best to consider what's right for the individual and their particular requirements. So I'll turn it over to Amy to correct me if I've said anything out of step.
I think you did a great job, Cynthia. Thank you. I would add to that remote work and flexibility of work is really just one piece of a suite of ways that we look at work-life integration and how we can help folks find the right balance. And nothing really brought that to light more than COVID, where you have individuals who are, trying to homeschool or virtual school kids, or balance elder care, or maybe they're actually single and feeling very lonely and need to get out into the building sometimes. And so we really did take it on an individual basis. I can say within my own team, I have folks working unique schedules to balance the child care or the child's school needs that they have, and we just made it work. And that's what we asked leaders to do, was truly have the individual conversation. With regard to the go forward plan, I think what is unique, and many companies are experiencing this right now, is having worked remotely or had so much of our workforce work remotely for a period of time, it's really opened up our eyes to new ways of using technology and how folks can be productive when they're not visible and sitting right in front of you or in the same office space. And so certainly we are working with leaders to explore in the longer term, how might that alter the approach that we take to when folks can work remotely, or how we leverage those offerings even more fully to make sure we're providing the right balance for our team members while still meeting all of the business needs. So I would say it's about the individual conversations and ultimately the flexibility that we need to give over the long term in this environment.
Thank you both. You know, it's interesting as we think about that particular subject, and some of the things are somewhat tangible to understand, right? How would you equip a workforce differently in doing that? How do you deal with any of the implications that relate to facilities and footprint and physical locations of people and business? The thing that I probably worry about the most, and Alan, I'm going to ask you to weigh in a bit here in a moment, is, you know, you miss some of the informal interactions, and what longer term implications might those have? Many of you are probably used to working in teams or walking down the hall and popping your head in someone's office with a quick question. And I don't know about you all, but I find myself making a note to talk to Sally or Joe about X, and sort of think maybe if I get 2 or 3 things to talk to Sally or Joe about, it will then cause me to make the phone call or do the outreach. And so things maybe lag more than they might if I had that quick informal, I could just pop down the hall, or I could see them for a few minutes, or we just grab lunch together. And so I think we're going to need to think through how do those sorts of things happen if and when we don't have folks more back into the office, and what roles are transactional that maybe are easier done in remote ways, and ones that aren't, that may require some different kind of interaction. You know, one of the things I struggle a bit with is I took this job at the beginning of the year, and very soon thereafter we found ourselves in some remote situations, and I hadn't had a chance to really develop a lot of the relationships with people that I would have liked, in particular customers. And it's kind of tough to just pick up the phone and call somebody and introduce yourself when you know they're very senior and they've got a big responsibility in their community. Alan, how have you worked through some of those sorts of things with staying close to your customer community and being able to then guide the solutions you're developing?
It's been challenging. I would say that what we really looked to was establishing routine conversations. So previously scheduled conversations that we knew was on the calendar, and that we knew we were going to have an opportunity to talk. And so from the standpoint of collecting those list of things, still do that. But now we have sort of a battle rhythm of, you know, depending upon the customer, we're going to talk once a week, we're going to talk once a month, and it's going to be short. But we know that we are going to have a time to exchange. And I've actually started doing things that I didn't do with customers before. I use instant messaging. I chat with them. I say, you know, I'll send notes to just say, hey, I hope things are well with you and your family. You know, here's a thing that I would like to talk to you about as soon as we get a chance. So doing a lot more outreach in those modes. We've instituted doing VTCs with customers, video teleconferencing, where people have that capability. And we actually have still done visits to customers, or have customers come to our campus, because some things you have to be in person to talk about. And in those cases, we just make sure that everybody is exceptionally comfortable with the protocols that we're putting in place and the controls to absolutely ensure everybody's safety. And so, you know, it's almost like giving yourself permission to reach out, because a lot of times, I know I suffer from this, you know, I think everybody's so busy, I don't want to bother them, right? And it's almost give yourself permission to bother them, because 9 times out of 10, they want to hear from you.
Yeah, I think we're finding that folks are actually somewhat delighted sometimes when you do reach out, and they've been perhaps isolated some as well. And it sounds like you, similar to me, and I think Cynthia mentioned earlier being an intra-nerd or introvert, however you want to look at it. That was a neat new word, and I'm going to keep track of that one, Cynthia. We did have another question related to coming out as a senior leader, so I'll take this one. How did you find that might have affected your relationship with peers, leaders? I'm going to throw in customers. And looking back, what would you have done differently, or maybe what advice would you give to someone in this situation thinking about it? And I think with all of it, what I would say is everyone will respond differently. You can't really predict, but what you can do is think about who you can confide in, who can you trust, and make sure you create some advocacy. You have a sounding board or two. You have an ally or two. They are out there, and you know that there are people that you have faith and confidence and trust in, and they will be there for you. They will support you as you disclose what you feel comfortable disclosing, as you put that picture of your family on your desk that someone may see when they come in to visit you. Not everyone will be comfortable with it. And I guess what I would say is I don't make it the center point of who I am or how I deal with people. I just show up as me. And in our professional and business environment, I focus on our outcomes, what our business is trying to do, getting roadblocks out of the way of our teams, all the same normal things that I think any of the 4 leaders we have here with us today or any other leaders in our business would focus on. But I might think about solutions in a different way just because of all that has influenced who I am and how I've come forward. I think what I'd do differently is probably not wait so long, not be so uncomfortable or held back for so long before I shared who I was. And I know I'm making it sound easy. Trust me, it's not. I know that. But there are people who can support you. And Out and Equal and this organization and this whole group of LGBTQ ally community is there for you. So let's move on. I'm going to just see if we have another question here that I'm looking for, and I'm not seeing one at the moment. Please don't hesitate to enter some. Let's see. We actually have a comment and a question about mental health again. And it's become a prominent topic, given our current environment and several sessions that are related to mental health during this conference. So I certainly encourage you to participate in those. This person is a military veteran and an LGBTQ member, and so it's a particularly important topic to that person, especially with this isolation that we may all be facing. So how can leaders like yourselves help our teammates struggling with these mental health challenges? And if you've encountered any of these situations, maybe how have you dealt with it and addressed it? I'm going to just, I'll start with Jay and go around if you have a response. Let's start with you, Jay.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Yeah, again, it goes back to that individual. Don't try to apply a formula or don't try to fix everything. That's not my job. My job, number one, is to listen, understand, and then get help, right? I'm not an expert in a lot of these things. I'm fortunate that the company I work for does have resources that I can go to. So I try to make that connection to say, here's one venue you can try, and then follow up and go, did that help? Is it getting, are you on the right path? Do you need additional help? And then even if the answer is, yeah, thank you, that was perfect, that's what I needed, we're on a good path, following up every once in a while. Things good? How you doing? How are things going? I think that's the best way I can help if I'm not an expert at all in something that I don't understand. I would never, push it aside, gloss it, that's not me, go find somebody else, but just be supportive with whatever resources you have.
Okay.
Mary, I think I would add to that just an awareness as a leader. You may notice things that seem different, that someone's not showing up the same way, they're not speaking up the same way. Their work may be showing a different output. And I think watching for those things and making sure you check in on an individual and take a moment to understand what's going on, and then encouraging people and giving them permission to take care of themselves. I think sometimes folks need to be reminded that we have to take care of ourselves and our families, or we cannot show up in the way we need to in an organization and be able to focus on the business results that we're trying to achieve. And at Northrop Grumman, we have a lot of wonderful support resources in place, like our employee assistance program. And so it's reminding individuals about those things, encouraging them to use them, but also just giving them permission to acknowledge that they might need to take a moment for themselves to really give that attention, and supporting them as a leader, I would add to that.
Excellent. We did have a question that's related to, I'm going to say, the current political environment and potential discriminatory efforts. And I think what I'm going to do is just respond to that in how proud I am of our company and the positions that our leadership has taken. And I know, Alan, you and I have had some conversation on this previously, but you know, the amicus brief in Title VII last year is a great example where we as a company joined other companies to sign the amicus brief that was filed with the Supreme Court on behalf of businesses and organizations in support of 3 related cases. But in general, it was really to address our concerns on employment discrimination and sexual orientation, and that we would not abide that. And I really am so proud that we had the courage as a company to take a position there. Alan, do you want to add anything?
I would just say that I fully concur. You know, I'm seeing in the chat many people, Mary, saying how inspirational you are, and it's true, right? And I'll just tell the audience here that Mary's not unique at our company. I get to learn and model from a number of inspirational leaders, and you know, Kathy Warden, our CEO, came out very clear. Sandra Evers Manley, very clear. What behaviors that we advocate, expect, and what our culture at Northrop Grumman is going to be all about. And so as a lower level executive, it's easy because the senior leaders, the C-suite leaders are setting that tone. They are being courageous, being authentic. And we just have to follow that lead. And it's just, it's wonderful. It's not all roses. There are challenges, and we've got to work with all individuals. But the tone and the vector and the culture and the direction is all very clearly set. And it's a great environment.
Thanks, Alan. Really appreciate that. We did have another question come in that's a really good one, and I'm want to get a couple of views on this. We'll start with you, Jay, and it's really about how are we leveraging our ERG leaders and our ERG teams in this current environment?
Yeah, great question. So our ERGs, our employee resource groups, we have had the, different groups established for many, many years to allow them to be a forum of folks to talk about different topics and things that relate to them. So what a perfect way to connect people in times where we need to talk more, right? So I have the privilege of being a sponsor for our APPN, our Asian Pacific Professional Network group here. And I just said, you know, guys, why don't we talk? Why don't we have an all hands and just talk about what's going on? What are you feeling? What are you thinking? So that we can hear that, you know, maybe some similarities or things that folks are either struggling with or don't know how to navigate through. Let's talk as a community and do that. Another thing I've tried to do is ask people, go to other ERGs, go to ERGs that you know nothing about, or you may think that's not me, or that's not, that they have nothing to do with my background and my thoughts. Listen to what they're talking about and what's affecting them, because that opens up that awareness that we talked about earlier. So I think the ERGs are a great forum for multiple different ways to communicate and just learn and understand what other people are thinking or trying to navigate through, because I I know for a fact they're going to touch on something that you're going to go, oh yeah, me too. You know?
Very good. Cynthia, did you have something to add?
It's very interesting because I feel like our ERGs are the groups with the population that really has its finger on the pulse of how our organization feels and what they're thinking about. I also believe that they have their finger on the pulse of the communities that they represent, as well as the community at large. And I think that I've learned more from our ERG representatives because they take such an active role in keeping me informed as an executive sponsor at the local level in San Diego for our PRIDA chapter, which is for our LGBTQ community and allies and advocates. It's unbelievable the things that I learn about, the willingness that they have when they see a safe space sticker on my office door and they know that they can come in and talk about anything. And in this COVID time, in this time of a social justice or injustice movement, depending on how you see it, people are feeling more and more comfortable to come in and talk about that. And for people who identify in multiple ways, as a person of color or as an LGBTQ member, a woman, a man, a non-binary individual, being able to come in and feel at an ERG that they can be themselves and have a place to talk amongst a community of people that are willing to hear them is probably one of the most powerful tools that we as leaders have at our disposal within our company. And I know that I hear that from peers at other companies. And they've been incredibly powerful, especially during these very uncertain times in the year of our pandemic.
So Cynthia, I'm gonna ask you to continue on one thread there because another question came in that you just gave a perfect lead into, and that is, it seems like we've really kind of just started this conversation. We've allowed ourselves to engage in these conversations because of what's going on. How do we think about 6 months from now that this conversation is continuing? It's not sort of done. It's not behind us. What are we thinking about? How do we continue that?
The biggest thing in my mind is really around this idea of embracing change and recognizing that there is no status quo, that the only thing that doesn't change is change, that it's going to continue to be a part of who we are, what we do, and how we do business. I think Alan touched on it in how we execute our connection to our customers. It's how we are going to work with our teams, both as groups of people as well as individuals. I believe in my heart that we have to focus on a future that isn't based on some abstract new normal, but recognize that the world ahead of us is shaped in part by the world that we're in and that we're exiting, that it isn't going to be the same as it's always been before, and that we have to be ready to embrace the change that's coming. And Amy used a great word, which I think is really important, and that's this idea of flexibility. In our industry, and I know that a lot of the participants today are probably in our industry, we hear a lot about agile and transformation. And I think those same terms with a little a and a little t go with a big F of flexibility to really think through what we can do to anticipate change and be prepared to embrace it and use it to propel us forward. I'm a really positive person. I try to really focus on the positive, but I'm not always an optimist. And I was having a discussion with a colleague this morning about that. It's easy to be weighed down with pessimism, especially at a time like this. And for my extrovert friends who are just climbing the walls, it really is important to find that space where everybody can be at the party, at the table. And so you do that by finding common ground and a common core, which is around this idea of embracing change and really using it as an opportunity and not as a barrier.
Having it make you stronger, and that really contributes to resilience, which I know Amy also had mentioned. Amy, did you want to add anything to that?
I think, Cynthia, you said it so well. And for me, as a leader, we really owe it to our teams to keep the conversation going. And that's what our team members want to have happen. And so it's about continuing to have the opportunities like the 10 minutes that Jay mentioned and others, but we just have to take the pause and we have to raise the topic. You know, we have to realize that we set the tone in the organization, and our teams often take our lead. And so giving them permission to pause and do the check-in and to have the discussion has been important. I'll say the question about employee resource groups and their role, what a tremendous leadership role those individuals have taken in our organization to really drive the dialogue and partnership with many of the senior leaders in the company. And it's just been very rich dialogue and a lot of learning. So while it's certainly surfaced a lot of painful memories and painful experiences that individuals have shared, I will say that the learning and growth we've seen in our organization and for me and my own team among my colleagues has been really powerful. And I look forward to continuing that, because I think that's how we keep the Northrop Grumman culture that we've worked so hard to build and really continue that foundation and build upon it further.
Excellent. I see we're getting close to time, and I normally at this moment in time in a panel would try to, wrap up what you all said, but this has been a really broad and robust conversation, which makes that really difficult. So just a few key points before I ask each of you the final question that I have for you today. And so a few things I was struck by that maybe I would try to wrap a bow around is this idea of giving permission, giving yourself permission to understand the environment around us, to create the environment that not only gives you a voice as a leader, but gives your people the ability to have a voice. Make that white space and then listen to what folks are saying and react, respond, participate in that. Maybe get out of your comfort zone. And this idea of empathy is really important, and we probably have all learned and expanded upon that in the environments we've been in these current times. I know I've learned a lot. I learned something here. I've learned so much in this first 9 months of the year so far, and I think it's created different rhythms for all of us on how we engage with our people, how we engage with our customers, how we engage with our families, as well as our teams. So I thank you all for the candid, open conversation, the great ideas, coffee clutches to come here, Cynthia. But let me ask each of you this one final question so that you can leave the team with your own simple thought. What one simple piece, if you could go back in time, what one simple piece of professional advice would you give your younger self? Alan, I'm going to start with you.
Mary, I would say, to our audience, I would say that the one piece of advice I would give myself is there's something that is greater and more important than being accepting. And that is being a sponsor, it is being a champion, it is being an ally. And that, whether it is for gender equality, whether it is for LGBTQ+, whether it is for an end to systemic racism, that you have a voice, use it, because that's a greater cause.
Great, Alan. Thank you so much. Amy?
I would add to that, if I could go back and give myself advice, it would be you don't have to do it alone. I think the richness of support and different perspective and new ways of thinking and approaching a problem or a challenge really has broadened once I realized that I didn't have to do it all alone. And we have so many talented, smart individuals that have diverse experiences around us. And we just have to remember to take a pause and leverage them, because one thing I've learned in my career is it's not often someone will say no, that they aren't willing to help you. And I try to do the same for others. And so, Alan, your comment really resonates with me.
Thanks, Amy. Jay, how about you?
Yeah, I think the one thing I would have told myself when I was younger was it's not the academic prowess or the education that's going to make you successful. It's courage. And we heard some examples from other panelists on different ways of applying that courage. But finding your voice, taking risks, is just step out of your comfort zone and use that courage to take you places where it's uncomfortable in the beginning, but that's okay. You're going to be in a much better place when you look back. So let courage drive you to many different places.
Thanks, Jay. Inspiring. Cynthia?
It would be empowerment, self-empowerment, recognizing that you don't have to wait for someone else to give you the keys, and really understanding your place at the table and what that place is. It doesn't mean being disrespectful. It doesn't mean that you have to be challenging everything. It means being empowered to bring yourself to the room, to the conversation, to the table, most importantly, in a professional environment, to your role at whatever level you are and wherever you are in the company, and at whatever place you feel comfortable sharing that. So I think, Mary, it was really powerful what you said. I really want to emphasize something and underscore it. Everybody should feel comfortable when they are ready, not waiting or holding back when they're ready, but feeling empowered to be who they are and to bring that person when they feel comfortable, not when they think others expect them to be there, because that's the right time for you as an individual, and it's what will make you more powerful as part of a team.
Excellent. Thank you. And those are all fabulous nuggets to take away. Mine would be, don't wait to be all of who you are in everything that you do. And I know it's scary, but the outcomes and the satisfaction you'll gain are truly incredible. So I'll leave you with that. Ever forward. Thank you all for joining, and I hope you have a great rest of the conference.